afternoon, everybody, and on GVC, good evening. There's people from Google all over the world that are here to join us today. So Abby, first, we just want to thank you for being here with us. This is a moment for us to all celebrate. So maybe just one more round of applause for Abby.
Thank you.
Okay, so her power, her voice is the theme for this year's Women's International Day. And we want to make sure that we're able to create the space for you to share your power. We all know it. There's been a lot of conversation about you joining us at Google for weeks now. Elise is in here somewhere. She emailed me a couple weeks ago, and we're all busy. We have a ton of meetings, and I saw your name. I didn't even know what I was saying yes to. I was like, yes, because it's rare that we can get someone with your background and your successes with us. So the first thing is, we talked about kind of rules of engagement in the back. So we want to try to have a vulnerable conversation where we kind of put it all out there. Abby's journey is so different from, I won't speak for everyone in the room, but at least probably most of ours in the stratospheric accomplishments you've been able to deliver in your life. But to get there, I know it wasn't always easy. So talking about the great and the hard will help us as we think about endurance in the easy and the harder days. But before we get started, I want to just ease up a little bit and have a little rapid fire.
Okay.
Okay, super easy, super laid back. Are you a beach or a mountains kind of person?
Okay, we live basically near the beach. I am a beach minus the sand person.
How does it work?
It doesn't. But I surf a lot and I wash the sand off. But I would go to the beach so much more if there was no sand.
Right. Damn that sand. Okay. Yeah. All right. And so as an athlete, so I am an old athlete, but I always think about myself as an athlete until the day I die. I'm certain you feel the same. So what are you doing now for your favorite workout?
Well, there's this little gym near our house that I walk to. It's a couple of blocks from where we live. And it's like a 50-minute group training session where it's like CrossFit light. We're not lifting bars. We're just push-ups, mostly body weight stuff. So I do that every weekday, every morning, every weekday. And I sauna and I cold plunge and I walk, those things.
It makes me think about, and I've got all these questions I'm supposed to ask and I can't help but meander. So I'm gonna keep the thread.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, coming from being a team sport athlete all your life and then moving into what I would call probably an individual athlete that's about mentality first, do you still gravitate towards the classes and the groups? Because you just said a HIIT class with a crew, and I'm curious if that's part of the mindset of just being a team sport athlete.
Yeah, 100%. It's so much more engaging. For me, I understand deeply that suffering shared is better.
It's facts.
Because there's never a day that I wake up and I'm can't wait to go work out today. I do it, behavior activation, I do it every day because I know that it's going to give me something on the other side. But the thing that was harder for me to transition is this idea of how I achieve my self-esteem, because it was based so much in my daily torture of my body. Honestly, as an athlete, It was the more I tortured myself, the better I performed. And that was true. But then when I stopped playing, I stopped torturing myself, because that's the natural progression. And then I started feeling bad about myself. I wasn't doing something hard to develop the self-esteem. And so I had to separate those links. I had to separate physical fitness from my own personal self-esteem. So I promised myself I did a whole year of physical fitness without suffering. And wow, that was so fun. And I struggled a little bit at first because I was not feeling that good. I felt like my body was changing, and that changed my self-esteem in the way, and I'm better now. As long as I do certain things. The cold plunge really does help, because it's 3 minutes of actual suffering.
Yeah.
That I never, not one time want to do. It's the thing I least want to do. And then when I'm done with it, and I'm I did something hardish.
So maybe public service message. I would say, best athlete in the world, but you don't have to be an athlete to move. And so there's something about working out every day. I was just gonna ask what it does for your mental health. And this is supposed to be rapid fire, I'm already off. But it's so important, because one of the things that I push at least my team to do always is get up take a walk. If you don't, like, I also have to work out every morning. If I don't, I feel like my day hasn't started. And what I've learned is that's a piece of my therapy where we're able to like wipe the world away and just be with self to reset. And so I do think like as we're giving each other messages of strength and upliftment, what you said, 5 days a week, whether it's hit light or you're doing something, you know, on the beach with a surfboard, movement makes you better in everything that you do, mentally and physically. So I just love that you, in a rapid fire, already gave us a nugget, a gem, because it is that important.
Yeah, I mean, and all the science is now kind of coming in that exercise is like the most important key element to longevity. And I don't know about you, but I want to live forever. So it is part of the playbook. It's part of my playbook that I use and I utilize on a weekly basis to make sure that I can not just live longer, but live well longer.
That's right. Okay, so, favorite Google product?
The Nest.
Hey,
Yes.
There you go. All right, DSM people in the house, good job.
For sure.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about Team First. And, you know, part of the chat that we were having as the women's group inside of Google was around your book, The WOLFPACK, which is beautifully merchandised here.
Thank you. You don't have to buy it. It's not, it's not for promotional purposes.
I almost can guarantee you they have it because there are quotes coming out of your book that move this audience. And I was like silently reading a lot of the conversations to just kind of hear what the room wanted to talk about as well. But I have to read some of these things because when you talk about greatness and when you live in a space of women's sport, you know this, you're often compared to the guy. Or when they're talking about, or if you search, you know, best athlete or best soccer player, you know, often you see a guy. And the work that you and your generation of U.S. soccer players have done, and now as you pass down that baton, has changed that guard of conversation. It was only possible because you have done the impossible. So held a record for most international goals scored by any soccer player, male or female. 184 goals. 2 gold medals, Olympics, 1 World Cup, captain. We have to talk about your co-captainship and that part of your career. You own a soccer team today in LA. You are, you know, even before you left the pitch, you were dominating. So in my mind, I always thought about a team sport athlete that is focused on how do I get from good to great, the 2% that we always talk about. And to get these kind of stats, I would have imagined your mentality was Abby first, team second. Maybe never said, but always thought. But when you start to read the WOLFPACK, you talked a ton about leading from the back and really understanding what it means to be a leader. And it is not being the most dominant person always on the field. It's about moving your team forward. Talk to me about your mentality on teamwork and sort of like teammanship and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, I mean, I think team first, like me first attitude, I think they both can be true at the same time, that you can be team first and you first at the same time. The decisions might be different, of course, but at the end of the day, the way that I think about what I was thinking about as an athlete, I really did filter most, if not every single decision I made through team first mentality. Like, we weren't with each other 365 a year. We were together sometimes 250 days a year as a team, which is a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah.
But, you know, that's still, let's just call it 100 days we're not together. What am I thinking about I'm thinking, what are they doing? I better be doing something, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know, this happened to start for me when I was a child. So my first 3 soccer games, I scored 27 goals. And I mentioned that not to brag, promise. But after the 3rd game, my mom and I were walking in the car and she looked down at me and she said, you know, honey, what do you think about passing? And I just was stumped. I was like, if the whole point of the game is to score as many goals as you possibly can, and I can do that better than anybody else, what's the problem?
What are we here for? Yeah.
And she said, well, honey, as you get older, you're not going to be scoring as many goals, and you're going to need your teammates. You need your teammates to score goals. And I thought, you're right. And to this day, there was never a single goal I ever scored without the help of a teammate.
Yep.
So yes, was my individual ability to score goals really important? For sure. Did it win me awards? Yes. And I never scored a single goal without the help of a teammate. I also scored a lot of penalty kicks, so you might throw out a question, well, what about the penalty kicks, Abby? Do you know how many hours my own goalkeepers had to stay after practice because I made them stay so that they could help me train how to become proficient at scoring penalty kicks? Countless hours. So this idea that we have to be one thing or another, that you have to be an individual sport athlete or a team sport athlete, I just don't believe it. I think that there is mentality. I think that you might trend to operate more in certain areas than others, but it doesn't mean you can't have skill sets that will benefit you so that the entirety of your life, your whole career, whatever it might be, will benefit. I mean, I think all the time now, since I'm retired, it's all I get to do about my career. And this is actually why I ended up writing this book, because there would be things that I would say or do that Glennon, ultimately Glennon's an individual sport athlete, she's an author. So she thinks very singularly about stuff and how it can be adaptive. So I would actually argue she's also a team sport player, even though she's sitting and writing very alone. So all of these things in every job that you're in, right? Like we all have teams that we're working with, whether we like it or not. You know, unless you are a solo entrepreneur doing it by yourself, which I doubt anybody in this room is doing, we have to learn the skills. And P.S., every single one of us is a leader in our own lives. I think we forget that. Like, you led yourself here today. You put those clothes on yourself today. You chose what you were going to decide to wear today. You know, like, these small things, though they might not be grandiose in a huge corporate environment, they are proof that you have leadership skill. And it is something that can be learned. When I first got on the national team, I was learning how to lead. Even though I wasn't given or handed leadership authority, I was learning from the people around me and the leaders around me. How are they doing it? I was siphoning all of the information that they were throwing at me, wondering, oh, that didn't land. That was not right. That didn't work. That really worked. Huh, that's interesting. And so through the course of my career, I was always intaking this information, learning how to be the best leader I could be. The early days, like as soon as Mia and Julie retired in 2004, I was kind of given the keys to the national team kingdom, so to speak. I was going to be the next big thing. And that next year was probably like the worst year because I was pretending to be a certain kind of leader that I had seen on television, rather than implementing all of those little things that I had been observing and learning throughout the course of my life up until that point. And so it wasn't until I figured that out. I mean, in fact, I was like so obnoxious. My form of leadership was just yelling loudly, enthusiastically at people. And it wasn't until I figured out, oh, nobody's listening to me, that I had to change and evolve my form of leadership, and I had to make it more true to who I was.
Yeah. So there too many gems dropped. And you actually answered my second question. So I want to go a little bit deeper on what you just said. So
Great.
The application of what Abby is saying and how she lived her life on the field with her team, always leading, always, standing in front of the team with the team, it could not be more true for Google, right? We are as good as the teammate to our left and our right. And so being able to be selfless in how you're approaching the work, but still making sure you're, this day, advocating for yourself at the same time is such a needle thread that you have mastered. We were talking in the green room a little bit because it seems like your team, there's some teams you can watch and you read about and that you could tell they're sisters flat out. There's some teams that you could tell don't like each other and like it kind of shows up on the field in the worst of times. You guys seem like a sisterhood through and through. Now there had to have been a few folks you didn't necessarily care for, but that was still your team and one team unit. You may work with people you may not care for, but you're still one team and one team unit. So I'm curious how you managed to keep the team united as one, even if you didn't necessarily love everybody on the squad.
Yeah, can y'all keep a secret? Our women's national team, there were like things that you needed to believe when you entered into the room. One, that you were individually one of the best in the world. And two, that those individual best abilities were going to create the best team. And those two things, to hold at the same time, is very hard. Because you could imagine 22 to 25 type A badass women whom all believe that they are the best in the world and all of them believe that they should be starting every game. That can create some conflict. That can create some divisiveness. And then by all intents and purposes, when we watch our women's national team, we never see that divisiveness.
Nope.
We see a group operating as one. And it's because when these folks come to the table and join each other, you see a group of people that believe in the concept of team more than anything. Now, it is true that I wasn't a fan, personally, of every single one of my teammates. There were actually a couple that I really just didn't like. But I respected the hell out of them.
Yep.
And so I think about this a lot, especially with such divisiveness happening in our culture, in our world. And I don't have answers to that, A. But more importantly, what are the threads that we can agree upon? And on the national team, sometimes they were thin. Sometimes they were like, you showed up to practice today.
Ooh.
And then as now in my retirement, I think back on some of the struggles that I had with some of these teammates of mine. They were in fact my greatest teachers. I hate saying that. I promise you, nobody hates saying that more than I do. But it's true. And to be in such a high functioning, place like Google or the national team, it can become very intimidating to be around such high performers, to be around such great talent that you think, I don't deserve to be here. But when you go to a practice to the national team, you are required to be at your best. Because if you are not, you are letting down the player next to you. Not because you're supposed to be great together, but because you're supposed to challenge each other. So I think that we are unfortunately getting a little soft in some areas of that challenge. Now, I'm not talking about violence. I'm not talking about real shit, like horrible shit. I'm talking about being able to get a job done.
Yeah.
And doing it in a way that makes the environment more uplifted, rather than focusing on all of these negative things. Sometimes there were days I was just like, that player showed up, they've left their home just like I did, they're sacrificing everything just like I am. And somehow, in some way, this person is here to teach me something. And so I'm not saying it is easy. What I'm saying, it is possible that you can win, be high performing, and also not totally align on every single ideal or issue. You still can achieve greatness. It's proof. Our women's national team is proof. And P.S., celebrating championships in the locker rooms was done by all, even those that might not have gotten along, because you have this shared respect and sacrifice that you've both laid out in the line for those wins.
The idea that you can equate sport to Google, and some of the absolute geniuses that are sitting in our rooms and in meetings that we all show up to and need to be our best selves. And the reminder that no matter how intimidating a room can get and be, or how tough a human can be in that room unnecessarily often, looking for the good, finding something that you've learned in the hard, is an incredible insight that I think we can all take into our everyday. I want to ask one more tough one. If you have an example of one of the situations where you as an individual athlete or as a team, you were at your worst, it didn't turn out the way it should have, the game was a L, not a W, you weren't your best self. In the hard times, how do you find leadership? How do you show up? And what can we learn from the harder times that you've experienced?
Yeah, so in 2010, our qualification tournament for the 2011 World Cup, it was down in Mexico, and we ended up losing to Mexico, not straight away qualifying. So what happens was we had to go into a qualifying, the second round. We had to play a home and away with Italy in order to qualify for the World Cup. Now, this is so long ago that social media, nobody was really paying attention to us. So it wasn't this huge media storm that it would be now, but it was still the most embarrassing thing to me. And I remembered instantly, we went into the team huddle, and everybody was just it was just shame and embarrassment. How could we let this happen? And I just remember getting in there, in that huddle, and just saying, y'all, we're fine. We still are in this, right? This is still in our control. We go play Italy, we beat them, they come back here, we beat them. We qualified for the World Cup. But what I will tell you is that what I present publicly is sometimes not the exact same thing that I am feeling privately. And that's a really hard distinction. We all want to be authentic and vulnerable, but there's times and places for that, right? So this to me was a huge shame to me personally, because I was a leader on the team, leading goal scorer. This team's success was riding on a lot of my shoulder, and I took that responsibility very seriously. So this was a massive wake-up call for me personally. What am I doing wrong? So that entire year, the lead up to the World Cup in 2011, though we qualified, I hung that third place medal. And it is still to this day the only medal that I actually show in my house as a beautiful reminder of things don't always turn out like you want them to, but it's always how you respond to those things that don't turn out like you want them to that matter. That's what character is. It's not if you fell down, it's how you get back up. Not that you get back up, it's how. I think we have forgotten in our culture that these things matter. Yeah, you can fall down 10 times and get back up every time, but not have learned a single thing on the way up. How you rise matters. And I think that that's so important. We will all fall down. We will all get benched. We will all get fired. Sorry, we'll all get demoted. It's going to happen. So when some of these things happen, give yourself a moment, take a breath, figure out what maybe went wrong. Also remind yourself what went right, and rise differently.
That's beautiful. Okay, so I agree. I want to go to the second chapter of your professional life and career. Before we go there, you just reminded me of something again, so off the books that we wrote down and talked about. You talked about when you were captain of the team, when it was transitioning to you as the next guard. Having the penalty kick moments that we watch with bated breath, I don't even imagine how you stand on that line. The mental health of it all. From being on the pitch, living the life of a rock star soccer player, now to having a podcast, writing a book, being a mom, having a family, doing all the things you're balancing right now, owning a women's professional soccer team, all the amazing things. How do you manage your mental health, and how do you think about that along with the physical health stuff we talked about earlier?
Well, good question. First of all, I just need people in here, you guys are all sciencey, techie folks. So in 2011, we went into penalty kicks against Brazil. There was this wild game. I scored very late. I don't know if you remember it.
Yes.
But we ended up going into penalty kicks. A lot of people think that the header that I scored won the game. It didn't. It tied the game. We had to actually win the game via penalty kicks. And our strength and conditioning coach actually collected this data and literally has gone around the world talking about this and the effects of physiological emotions and the effects that it has on your physiology. So I was ready to take my penalty kick. I put the ball down and I was standing there. And I'm breathing like normal, not like out of breath, but my heart rate is in the 90th percentile.
Wow.
So what is happening in an athlete's mind or a person's mind as a game is going on, as the stress goes higher, is so linked to what is going on with our mental state and our emotions, right? And so I think that that's a really important thing to discuss, because athletes, we have become, I was so accustomed. People would ask me, like, before games, like, are you nervous? Like, no, I'm excited. Like, that is a skill that I learned. Because when I was 10, I was nervous. But it's the literal same physiological response. The word excitement and nervousness literally makes your body do the exact same thing. So one reason I believe why athletes are so prone to becoming really successful in the business world is because of that is one of the most beneficial psychological tricks that you can play on yourself. When you feel a little bit nervous, I'm doing this with my 15-year-old daughter right now. She's a soccer player. She's like, oh, I'm so nervous. I'm like, stay excited. You stay excited. And then you start to learn that, oh, excitement and nervousness are kind of the exact same thing. It operates, it engages parts of your body. But I think, like, what was the other part of the question? I got so excited.
Managing your mental health, period.
Oh, mental health.
Yes.
Yeah. So nowadays, and I really struggled as an athlete. At the end of my career especially, I was really stressed about what I was going to do when I retired. I didn't have a plan. I was just like all in on athlete, Abby. Even in college, I did not go to school very often. I was all soccer player, Abby. And so when my career came to an end, I really was suffering. I was really having a hard time mentally. I couldn't manage my life, so I was drinking a ton. And as an athlete, I needed pain medicine to play. And so I started to develop these addictions. And soon after I retired, thank God, though DUI is terrible, it was the very best thing that ever happened to me in my life. I've been sober almost 8 years, which is amazing. And to me, mental health is a constant daily check-in, and it's not always linear. It's like, I feel shitty. I feel great. My brother passed away a couple of months ago, and so I've been going through some grief. And what's interesting with this grief thing that's happened recently to me is it's like a train. And like every grief that I've experienced in my life they're all like attached to this train by all of these different cars. And so I'm dealing with now, because I've not gone through grief since I've gotten sober. So I'm dealing with so much stuff that I had stored up on all of these cars. And so, you know, my mental health is like, I think it's okay. And also when grief shows up, it's like, it's not okay.
Yeah.
So I don't have an answer to this, but what I do know is that I have certain things that make me feel better, question mark, maybe. You know, I have heart disease in my family, so I do a sauna every day. I do a cold plunge every day. I try to work out 5 days a week and go on, you know, 15 to 20 miles of walks during the week. And so that's what I can do for my body. And what I have found that works for me is that when I am moving my body, most of the other stuff in my life works out.
Yep.
But that's just for me. That's not everybody. Some people need to sit still in meditation for 20 to 40 minutes a day. That ain't happening for me. I really am impressed by those who can do it, very much so. But I'm a body and motion kind of person. And so that's kind of how I deal with it. And then when you add other humans to what could be, you know, a compromised situation with any kind of challenges, mentally speaking, it gets even more complicated because you're dealing with your kids' mental health and you're dealing with your wife's mental health. And my wife and I, we have a podcast that's basically what we're working through on our podcast every single day is our own mental health.
So good.
So like we have these like therapy sessions with each other that we then air to the world. I mean, I don't know if that's good for our mental health. No, but I think that it's also part of that it's really important to talk about these things because, you know, there is an opening that's happening with the stigma around mental health, which is so great. And also there's still a huge stigma attached to it. So it's like the more we talk about it, the more language we can have around understanding our own psyche. To me, it's so fascinating. You know, I am a body person, so like our minds, for me, it's like the next frontier that I'm like, really? I just started therapy like 6 months ago, trying to figure out if I love myself. Guess what? I figured it out, I do. I know, it's so exciting. That's the other thing about grief, which is like really beautiful and hard, is like it forces you to ask like the really hard questions that you don't. My therapist actually said, one of the most beautiful and hard to handle things in grief is that it opens this portal that for the rest of your life, you kind of keep shut. And it's the idea that we will all not be here one day. And that is too heavy. It's too heavy to carry every single day. It's too heavy to have that aperture open all the days long for our whole lives. But there is so much beauty in the reality of that. There is so much presence and so much like nothing matters and everything mattersness to it all. It's just like an allotness. I got off task.
No, that was you. What you have continued to do is answer my next question.
Oh, good.
So I actually was not going to go there on your journey to becoming sober.
Ooh.
And I'm thankful that you brought that into the room because I think real life, you know, you look at the picture and you're like, this, we were talking about your podcast and your episode with Tracy Ellis Ross, who is my like spirit animal. And I'm like, Tracy Ellis Ross is perfect. You guys, as you're journeying through your own, you know, sort of therapy with Glennon and yourself on the podcast, you're bringing people in that help all of us understand nobody has it figured out.
Yeah.
And so the idea that you're on a journey with your mental health, the idea that you're just seeing a therapist and you're still trying to learn through it is the answer that I hope we all recognize. There's no end in that journey.
That's the problem for me, my therapist tells me.
You needed an end at the journey? You needed a point.
She just told me yesterday, and she said, so remember what we were talking about last week, where, you know, you're not gonna just learn something and then it's gonna be done. Like you are evolving and you're through experience, you will continue to grow. And I have to keep reminding myself that it is, to me, nobody knows what we're doing.
Facts.
I don't care if you are an expert and the smartest person in the world. Nobody knows what happens when we die. And so we do not know what we're doing. Like, we might have a routine. We might have a job that pays us, and we have, our shit figured out. We got our stuff figured out enough, but we're all just like trialing and erroring our whole way through this. And that makes me have compassion for us, especially stupid people. Just kidding.
Okay,
Not
I'm moving you to the next
Yes.
chapter of your life. Okay. All right, so now let's talk about, I want to try to get your sense on, there's joy in sport for you. And so as you've moved to the next phase of your career, first, like, how did you discover where the joy would be? How did you find joy? And then what I have loved from the outside in is watching your family dynamic, because it just seems powerfully beautiful and tribe. It's one tribe. How do you find work-life balance? Because between Glennon and yourself, you're always somewhere doing something.
Yeah.
And Googlers, no matter what level we are in our journey, we are busy, and you can find yourself spending too much time in the work stuff. And so finding that delicate balance is always a journey. How have you solved it in your world?
Yeah. I mean, I think to answer your first question, which was what?
Find the joy.
That's right, joy.
Yep.
Sorry, these two-part questions are
Okay, no more two-parters.
headed the ball a lot. The joy part, I think that this is really important for people to understand, because when I first started playing soccer, it was fun. And then I became elite at it, and there were parts of that were fun, and there were also parts of that weren't, that the fun got sucked out of it. And as you get older, as you get more elite, you have to recalibrate what feels like fun and joy. At the end of my career, it was no longer fun to play soccer. But it was fun to go out in front of a bunch of fans and play. It was fun to earn an income for my family. It was fun. So your priorities change in certain ways, and so you have to get really honest with yourself. And I always said, as soon as the fun is gone, I'm out of here. And so I literally retired, 6 months later. And I also think that has to happen in every job, right? Like, at first, it's new, it's novel, it's unique, it's interesting, but trying to figure out how to reorganize where the joy is coming from is so important. I am a joy-first person. Glennon doesn't understand this concept at all. She's like, what is joy? Like, I don't...
There's this thing called joy.
Yeah, and I think, like, for me, I feel like as I'm passing time down here, I want to be experiencing, and through my experience, I'm trying to always alter the experience to suck out the most joy out of it, right? So if I'm stuck in a line somewhere, I'm not just standing there. Who's just standing there? That's so boring. I'm like moving. I'm moving to the grooving. I'm like in my body. I'm like looking around. I'm people watching. Like, I'm trying to extract as much as I can from the life that I'm living.
Yeah.
And, our children and our family and managing joy is also really hard, because we have lives. Like, it's busyness and life-work balance is like, I don't know, I don't like the concept of life-work balance. Like, if you're thinking, do I have life-work balance? It feels to me like you're probably doing more work than fun.
Something you don't love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, as soon as soccer started to become too much work, I was like, as soon as it took me away from my friends and family to feel that sense of myself, that's what I think balance is. Yeah. To be able to feel you. When it's out of whack and you're all business and no pleasure, then you're not able to access you.
Yep.
And so that's where I don't love the phrase work-life balance, because then it also connotates, like it gives us the idea that we should always be perfect.
Yeah.
And like, that's just not true either. Like, marriage is not 50-50, folks. It's 100-100.
Yeah.
Like, that is the truth. I mean, that was one of the best things that somebody told me when I got married for the second time. Unfortunately, he should have been there the first time around. But I thought, that's right. Like, you're not splitting this thing in half and giving, like, we have to figure out how to be fully embodied in all the places of our life. And if we can't and we aren't, that's good evidence that we might need to shift some stuff.
Yep. So I have so many more questions, but should I be asked, where is Elise? Oh, I do? Okay, good. What legacy do you want to leave?
Well, the first part of my life, soccer part, I think that I did it.
I agree.
I played as hard as I could for as long as I could, and I think that I was a part of a group of people, the whole, like every teammate and every woman who'd ever stepped into a jersey for our women's national team. To be a part of a program like that has now since been able to achieve pay equality.
Huge.
Yeah, like when Megan and Alex Morgan, when they signed those documents, I was so jealous that I wasn't a part of it. I was so happy for them and also sad for me. But a few months after, I got this check in the mail.
Oh.
I didn't know it, but I was a part of the class action lawsuit.
Oh, there you go.
And so I got money. So I was a part of it.
You mentioned in your book, and then when you go to Megan and you go to Alex and you go to that Lauren and that whole crew who learned from you, they got to sign the papers, but you are the legacy. And the team that handed it to you started it. You know what I mean? Like, you were there.
So many women were there. And on those pages, inside of the hearts of the women's actual signatures that signed those contracts, pride is not the right word. It's like, finally.
Yep, that's right.
Finally, these women deserve what they're getting.
Yep. I love it. Okay, maybe one more question, and then we'll open it up to the room. Yep. Okay, so the WOLFPACK, which is, we all need T-shirts that say it, by the way. And the idea of the WOLFPACK is just understanding that you are not alone ever. Mm-hmm. And like, as a very nerdy corporate person, I used to always think about it through the lens of, who is my personal board of directors? Who do I call when it's all falling apart? Who do I call when I need to learn something? Who do I call when something went wrong or went right?
Yep.
You call it the WOLFPACK.
Yep.
And so my question for you is, how do you choose who's in your WOLFPACK? And then how should this room think about, whether it's your personal board of directors or your WOLFPACK, like how should they think about the community in which they should gain?
This is good. So I was the captain of the team when I retired, and I was a co-captain. And, throughout the years, you spend so much time together that you just assume these people trust you, these people respect you, because in some ways you spend so much time together, right? And then you retire, and the calls just never stop coming. You're like, babies are born and diagnoses happen and surgeries and parents die and all of this. And it's like your leadership, just because your tenure is over, doesn't stop. And so cultivating your board of directors table is so important. And who you put on that board is so important, right? Like, got to know yourself. Got to know, hey, I'm a kind of person that I want somebody to be really direct and straight with me. Or I'm the kind of person that I need a little bit more soft touch. Knowing who those people, knowing who you are first and foremost will help you define who your board is going to be. And then knowing that there are going to be people that come in and out of your life at times. Yeah. This is not a set in stone situation. I think that we are so apt to keep people around when they're not serving us any longer because we're afraid of hurting feelings, or there's really no social way to like break up with friends. We're trying to figure it out on the podcast, where we really are like, how do you have a breakup friendship conversation?
It's real.
Lovingly, and like, I wish you the best. It's just, this is just not working for me anymore. It's difficult. And also, when you get married and you have children, I think about this all the time right now. Like Glennon and I, we've been like CEOs of our children's lives, and now they're getting older. We have a junior in college. Like, we have to teach him how to be the CEO of his life, how to be able to operate and go out into the world and build his own board table. And that's so sad. Like, we love our kids so much, probably too much. But yeah, we have to learn learn who we are first and figure out what kind of a life we want, and then be able to put in people that will help serve us and our vision and our dreams, and to allow the manifestation of what our dreams are to come true.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
The idea that friendships can be for a season.
Yes.
Is real.
Yes.
Please have a focused podcast episode on that, please.
Yes.
Okay, because we would all like to learn how to break up.
And look, and one of the things that I think is so valuable is so many of the relationships that I made on our national team are life forever friendships that we never talk. Like, literally, like my brother died, and two of my teammates, who I don't talk very much to, showed up. I don't even know if they ever met my brother. And I was so touched. And it's like, that's just how bonds go. Some, you need to keep stoking that fire, but there's others which I think are sometimes more valuable, especially when you have a family and you've got lots of stuff, and you don't, like the friend that you don't need to call, but when you do, it's like you never stopped calling.
Yep.
So
beautiful. Okay, so I overtalked this situation. We have 7 minutes, I think, in total. Okay, so maybe 2 questions? Lives. Gina. Is Gina in here somewhere? Oh, look at that organization. Hi, Gina, you're right there.
Hello. Thanks for having us, and thank you for being here and hosting and reminding me that I am actually excited right now, not nervous.
That's what I'm talking about.
Taking that one home. I'm going to do my best not to say work-life balance, because it was in my originally prompted question.
It's okay. If you do, I won't.
No, we're gonna act on the fly here. So, having gone from a professional athlete to being prolific in new careers, right, as well as wife, parent, all the important things, how has your perspective changed or shifted on work-life embodiment, work-life not balance, but boundaries?
Yeah.
How has it shifted specific to what's important about your perspective or your take on it? Is it the external things, right? Very different career types, different jobs you're in, or is it internal decisions that you make for yourself?
I would tell you this is probably an area that I need to do a better job at making more boundaries for my personal self. When you have 3 children, a lot of ness in the business world, a lot of enticing stuff in the business world. Come and be a part of this. Come talk here. A lot of ego filling stuff. I could do a better job at saying no more. And when you have two women who are in a marriage together, who are obsessed with their children, there's never off. There's no off. I've no other way to explain it. I mean, a long time ago, early on when I got together with Glennon, I'd walk into the room and I'd be like, what can I do? And she early on was like, you could know what to do and just do it. Why am I managing your doing things? And I'm like, well, the kids, and she's like, you are an adult person who knows what is going on in the kids' lives. It's about storing it in your mind. So she said, okay, you're an athlete. So you know on the bottom of the ESPN ticker, where they're always updating new scores. And I'm like, yes, I do know that. She said, imagine the ticker is always running in your mind about your children.
Peace.
That is parenting. She's like, that's what I'm doing all day. That's why you come to me, because you know that I have this running ticker that's always encircling my thoughts. And I said, that's interesting. And so now I spend a lot of my time tickering. She'll go, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm tickering, don't bother me. And I think that that's really important. And it's important to say something like that on International Women's Day here in this celebration, because that's so much harder for women to be able to find any kind of work-life balance, because we are the managers of most of our households. And we're doing the extra work. The mental load is on our shoulders. And so, you know, that took me a little bit to get used to, but she used a sports metaphor. So can you all. Lots of your husbands will understand that metaphor, I bet. And yes, I think that, you know, families are hard, and I do need to say, get better at saying no.
Thank you. As a mom of three also, and married to a sports fanatic, I will be using that immediately when I go home. Glennon is a genius.
Thank you.
Hey, Abby, thanks so much for coming to talk to us today. So over the course of your career, you were a part of a number of really high-performing teams, including the Washington Freedom, which I grew up being a huge fan of.
Hey.
Yeah, and the U.S. Women's National Team, obviously. And building really high-performing teams is also something that we care deeply about here at Google. Obviously, a little bit different context. But I'm curious from your perspective, what are the key ingredients to building and sustaining high-performing teams?
Yeah, so a couple years ago, I sat on a panel with a former teammate of mine. Her name is Mia Hamm. You guys know her?
Her name is.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we were kind of talking about the differences of style of play between me and her. And I was kind of trying to be funny, and I made fun of how slow I was, because by comparison to Mia, she was really fast. And I'm big, strong, not as fast. So I was like, I was slow. And she like almost jumped at me. And she's like, don't do that. And I was like, do what? I was just making a joke. She's like, no. She's like, one of the most important things about being on the national team that made us so strong is that we embraced not just our strengths, but we embraced our own weaknesses, and we vocalized them. So that when we were on the field, it wasn't Abby and Mia trying to do the exact same thing. It was Abby and Mia trying to be who they were at their best, and hoping like hell that their strengths and weaknesses did this. I think that we don't do that enough. I think that we're only looking for what we believe is the highest performer based on, I don't know what you guys talk about, data, analytics, all that stuff.
Spot on.
But like when you're organizing a team, you have to be very thoughtful at like how each piece of that team is going to affect the other. And no team is going to be the same. So every single team that I played on, even the championship teams, they all were organized differently, different personalities, different skill sets, different weaknesses. So the number one element to achieving those successful championship teams is not only the organization and the management and understanding of those skills and weaknesses, but it's the ability to accept all of that, so that you know, some players might think that their strength is better than, none of that matters. It's like, here's what we got. And if we have a strong enough, empathetic enough, a vulnerable enough leader at the helm, we will all buy in to the idea of the way that they believe that the management of this team will help us achieve that success.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Abby.
Hi.
Big fan. So I recently heard on a podcast, the world is calling for us all to step up as leaders, and we each have a very specific assignment. They were speaking about like finding your calling and your purpose. It made me think of your book, and that your passion for soccer, but your gift as a leader led you to finding your calling. So my very practical question, asking in need, is when you retired from the field, how did you learn to refocus that gift and find your new calling?
Okay, so I'm gonna get a little woo-woo here, but I'm close to San Francisco, right?
Yeah, you are.
Okay. I've been thinking a lot about this, primarily because I'm obsessed with figuring out why I personally like watching some athletes more than others. And it's not always who you would think. I love watching Steph Curry play. And I think that there is an element, because as an athlete, you could dissect all of my statistics and figure out what I was good at. But I've been obsessed since I've retired trying to figure out why I was good at them. And we were talking a little bit about this backstage, and I think that this is also part of my leadership strategy, and I didn't know it at the time. I wasn't conscious of it. But there was a time in my life as a high schooler that when I would go and play, I would try hard and I would care internally, but I wouldn't show externally that I cared as much as I did internally. And so what Glennon would call this is to become integrated. So what's happening on the inside is showing on the outside, to become integral, right? And not until I started to learn how to match my insides with my outsides, that is when my life changed with soccer. I started to play, and it was obvious to everyone that I cared. It is the most vulnerable thing you can do, to say, I care. It's like the love of a child. It's so vulnerable. It's like this precious thing, I care about this thing more than anything. That is why I think that there are some people on planet Earth that can be so in touch with that part of themselves. Those are some of the best leaders I've ever known, the people who can stay in their integrity through good times and bad times, even if they've been heartbroken over something, a loss or a devastation, whatever. It is the hardest thing to step back up and say, yeah, but I cared. That was really hard for me because I cared so much. And to be that kind of a leader, like, it's entrancing. Have you ever had a leader like that they actually, you could see it and feel it in all of the things that they said and did, that they cared? I follow those people like they're magnets for me. Because I'm like, oh, you too? Yes, let's go. I'll go anywhere you want to go. Because I also care, and I think that we get sidetracked because of our egos and because of the way we want to present and look and cool and this and that. And it's like, if you want to be great at anything, just show up and care. And show the world that you care. That is such an important piece. Like, that amplifies and it goes out into the world. And it gives other people permission to also care. God, couldn't we use a little bit of more caring? Like a little bit of more real truth, deep, grounded, like I want goodness for everybody. And so in terms of like how I transitioned my soccer to that, like I figured that out about myself. That I know makes me not different, but because I can access it and because I can live in it, that is what made me special on the field. And that is the thing that I carry with me everywhere I go.
That's incredible.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Keep going. Okay, last one.
Hi, Abby. I'm a huge soccer fan, and honestly, your journey is very inspiring. So my question is, what strategies did you use to maintain your dedication and passion for soccer, like throughout your career, even when things were difficult and you faced a lot of challenges?
I love this question because I have kind of a wonky answer. I don't know if my brain is the same as everybody else's around this. That's why I say wonky. I was obsessed with like tracking everything, all of my heart rates, all of the meters and miles that I ran, all of my strength and conditioning. I was obsessed with tracking it and trying to get those incremental gains. So weekly, I'd see where I was, and if I didn't hit certain goals or numbers, then I would have to reorganize and revamp what I was trying to do. But there was a deep knowing and a wiser part of myself that knew that I would never find out what my level, like what the top was. I knew that it was like a directionless goal. It was just better. Like that was it. Like my goal was better. I just want to be a little bit better. And as an athlete, I have a finite career. My career will end. And yet I still find myself trying to make these incremental gains. I still find myself doing competitive things that aren't even competitive, like walking into the grocery store with Glennon, and I'm like, want to race? She's like, no, I don't. And so, I don't know, it felt more like it felt more like a way I was born. Like I was born to be doing this thing. And I was like born to have this mindset around this growth mindset, like now that it's been coined. But I was just like, I just knew that I would never know what my top level was. And that had to be okay. Like I had to surrender to not ever figuring it out. Even in retirement, I'm like, I sometimes think like I could have gone longer, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. And I think that that's like the wisest, most centered part of myself that knows that we're never going to know. Yeah. And that is a really humbling quality while also being very motivating at the same time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so I hate to do this, and we're 4 minutes over.
It's
so
okay.
I'm sure
It's
someone's
okay.
gonna. I'm gonna get a little lecture for that one. But the conversation, I was just jotting down how this conversation at least made me feel, and I hope did the same for the audience. The idea of your power and your voice is why we were here today. And we kind of kicked off like, we're gonna just say anything, and I wasn't gonna say everything, and you let us go all the way there. And so the ability to have such power in your voice while being completely vulnerable to your truth, which is, it is a journey, and you're continuing to be on that journey willingly as the participant. The realness in which you bring all things, and the insight that you've given us from the shoes of an elite athlete, the best in the world, now best entrepreneur in the world, to all of us in this room is something we're gonna take with us. I don't know, you said this without saying it. We needed this kind of upliftment today more than maybe I even knew. The world is hard right now, you said it. And we don't even have to go into the details of the hard, because we all know in everyone's walk it looks different. But at the end of the day, finding pockets of joy, and you exude, I wrote down joy 5 times today. You exude joy. And if in darkness you can always pull back to joy, like if we take nothing, that's at least what I'm taking today. And so we want to thank you for being here, for celebrating with us your journey and your ability to just allow us to feel like, you know, so relatable to the experiences that you've had and apply it to our lives. So thank you for being here. You could be anywhere. You chose us, and we are highly, highly grateful.
Thank you for having me.